And welcome back to Scarred for Life, the podcast where we open up old wounds by looking back at the films that scared us as kids. I'm Terry.
And I'm Mary Beth.
In each episode, our special guest brings with them a movie that traumatized them as a child.
This week, our guest is Dani Bethea. You have seen their work all over the internet. They were one of the editor-in-chiefs of the We Are Horror magazine, and they are an active contributor to the mental health and horror documentary, Cinespeak, Studies in the Fantastic, and more. Welcome to the show!
Hi! Thank you both for having me, Terry and Mary B. It's great to be here.
Thanks for joining us. We're really excited to chat with you. I've been wanting to get you on for some time now, and this just seemed like the perfect opportunity. And boy, I cannot wait to talk about the movie that we're going to talk about. But before we do, let's take it back to the very beginning. How did you get introduced to horror?
I love this story because it usually involves my parents. So my parents were avid, horror, sci-fi people. And they introduced me to like a lot of the classics. So when I say classics, things from their childhood. So they were born in the 50s. So they got everything obviously that came before and everything that came after. So them also being young people in the 80s, they introduced, or at least they opened that door to like all the good stuff that the 80s had to offer. So that was like my first probably gateway. And then after that, obviously, anything and everything that was like on TV, VHS, was fair game for the most part.
Were your parents very lax when it came to allowing you to watch all sorts of horror, or did they get stricter or anything like that? Or was it free game?
I don't really remember them kind of saying that XYZ you cannot watch.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't remember, the only show I kind of explicitly remember my parents saying you were not allowed to watch was The Simpsons.
Oh, okay.
Interesting.
And maybe because it was animated and it had like adult humor, like really adult humor sometimes, that they were like, wait a minute, this is animated and, they shouldn't be watching this, but like other horror movies were okay. So I don't know. I don't know parental logic. I don't know.
Do you remember the first horror movie you ever saw?
Gosh, that is a really difficult question. I think maybe the Universal Classics, maybe. Okay. Like all of the Universal Classics and or like some of the old like B movies, like Them, like Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Probably because obviously like for my parents, that's like what they grew up with as kids. And obviously whenever like Turner Classics, like Monster Fest would roll around and like Monster Vision would roll around, so on and so forth. Like that's kind of what I remember. And I specifically like remember those like being seminal pieces of like horror media, like every October that were like a must watch. I cleared my schedule.
Oh, yeah.
and just like, fell into a completely different world. So
yeah, Universal monster movies. That was my introduction to horror too. My dad was obsessed with those old 1930s, 1940s, black and white horror movies, and that was like what got me introduced to horror. Do you remember like the first time that you saw, or like maybe a more? Because like I can always, I guess what I'm thinking about is I could like think about my childhood in terms of like the movies that my parents grew up with, vice the movies of like the 80s. Do you remember like that first movie that was like different from what your parents like maybe introduced you to, or what your parents grew up on?
So I was born in 1990. So I was born at like probably the perfect moment where like I got all the good stuff from the 80s and then like all the good stuff from the 90s. So I don't think I was bereft of any horror content, but like obviously the 90s was like this new avenue, right? So I noticed you have the Candyman shirt on. Like Candyman, like we got some really great, it traumatized me, Arachnophobia, that came out the year I was born. Why?
That movie.
I love and I hate that movie at the same time.
Oh, I hate it. I absolutely hate that movie.
Terry.
As I've said on the podcast before, it's like, it's not that it did not give me arachnophobia. It just gave me more reasons to be afraid of spiders.
That part. So it just kind of cemented for me, like forevermore, that I would despise spiders for the rest of my life.
See? Connection. I'm right there with you.
Yeah, it was too much. And then, the big giant which I loved. Okay, I loved it and I hated it because I'm a huge fan of like robotics and animatronics and all the things that go into making some of these spectacle horror movies. So it had that giant, you know, robotic, humongous mommy spider like in the basement, and it was just like woo, but like woo, and it's you know what I mean? It was like a thrill ride, but like I want to get off thrill ride. So so I love it and I hate it. You know what I mean?
Oh, I do.
So,
except I'm more of one that just want to hate it. I never want to watch that movie ever again type of thing.
Yeah. And then of course we had all of our kind of subliminal horror movies that were really starting to take horror like in a different direction, and you know, being a lot smarter and more savvy, being a little bit more psychological. And then obviously, of course, in the 2000s we had 9/11 that changed everything else after that. So yeah.
So you said you were born in 1990. What a time to like grow up with horror movies, because I know that you were pretty similar with that, Mary Beth.
Yeah,
in terms of like that decade. Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. What do you people usually say things like, oh well, the 90s and like not the 90s but the early 2000s. I still think that the early 2000s had some decent things to give us in terms of horror movies. Maybe not the not the best, but important.
It had a few gems sprinkled in there.
It had a few gems.
Yeah, but I understand what people are talking about because, like we mentioned, like that 9/11 period was like this demarcation of like where horror could like get away with a lot of things and just be explicit and violent and so on and so forth. But like there was like that kind of whole, at least about a decade or so, that people were like, ooh, you know, we're not going to like kind of fund good horror movies. We're not going to invest in it. The genre kind of, you know, fell apart for a while. But we got a lot of, what am I trying to say? A lot of like hostile.
Yeah. Oh, the torture porn stuff.
Yeah, the torture porn stuff, which is interesting. That has overlays with like the war in Iraq and so on and so on and so on and so on. And
so were you?
But that's another podcast.
Were you a scared kid growing up? Like, were you scared easily when you watched horror movies?
No, not at all.
Okay,
not at all. I genuinely like loved horror movies. Like one, I think I knew, like obviously it wasn't real. There were kind of only a few that would like get under my skin. So like, let's say like arachnophobia or, and maybe that was like the one, like number one. I just don't do spiders. So, but anything other than that, because I knew it was like, you know, suits or prosthetics. And also because I really got into like the making of behind the scenes. It probably just gave me like maybe like a little bit more distance between the movies.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was a geek. I was a geek and a nerd, so I was just like, ooh, how did they do this? How did they do that? So yeah, no terror, no nightmares, like nothing like that. Wow. So yay. I had other things in life to traumatize me.
Yeah. That's fair enough. Okay, so as an adult though, what draws you to the genre now?
What draws me now are just like the door that's been like forced open and kicked open by so many different, you know, people in the genre. So like all the queer people who are making horror movies that they always wanted to make, women who always wanted to make horror movies that they wanted to make, like all the people of color that are making movies like nationally and internationally that they've always wanted to make. Like it's incredible, absolutely incredible. All of the horror like content we've gotten just in the past like decade. It's incredible. Maybe I should say maybe about 15 years. Maybe I'll give it about 15. Because like there was like this wave, and then like once it started, it just seemed like everybody's like horror, you know?
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
I know that you said you didn't get scared as a kid. So has that transitioned to adulthood? Are you desensitized? Are you able to separate yourself from the horror movies still as an adult?
I think now that I'm older, the commentary that a lot of movies made when I was a kid, or even the ones now, they hit a lot different.
Okay.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
they hit that kind of more mature adult part of you that gives you, like, that existential, like, dread and, like, doom and nihilism about the world even more. So
Yeah, there's a lot of things to be afraid of as an adult.
What was the last movie you remember, like, really having that effect on you?
what have I watched recently? I've watched Master.
Okay, yeah.
I've watched Titan. I've watched, there's so many I've had to catch up on. I caught up on some Black Mirror. Yeah, so a lot of those are like doom and gloom.
Is there like anything that's really gotten under your skin that like has stuck out in your head though? Even if it's like not from like, it's from like the last 10 years or so.
I know something that's a mixture of gotten under my skin, but also really intrigued me. I know horror movies have always kind of done this as far as storytelling, but like, where does the kind of line begin and end between like human and animal and human and like machine and stuff like that? So I noticed we're getting a lot of movies like that lately. Like, some I've even got to catch up on. Like, there's that one movie, I think it's called Lamb, where where like there's a half goat child born, and then like I heard at the end of the movie, like, goat dad shows up and like is like a half human, half goat anthropomorphic thing. And then I know Titan was like this half human woman, half machine. There's been a lot more like half human, like half demon movies, obviously like Hereditary. Like, there's been like this really interesting, Candyman is another example, human supernatural spirit, you know, other world. So like, there's been like this really huge kind of uptick. And, you know, maybe it's just the new kids on the block, right, that are having an opportunity to explore some of these things, but like in a more modern way. You know what I mean? Yeah.
We have seen a whole lot more of that sort of like transhuman monster animal something kind of pursuit. It's interesting. I hadn't even really thought about that, but you're right. There's been a lot. Or like even not even with that, but like even Jumbo. I don't know if you saw that. I think it came out like last year, where a woman falls in love with a Ferris wheel, or not even a Ferris wheel. It's like it's a Jumbotron.
Yeah, it's a weird wheel carnival ride thing.
It's a lot of interesting, and that's a really good queer movie, by the way. It's like uses it to explore like marginalization and stuff. But regardless, there's been a lot of that, and I hadn't even really thought about that until you just brought that up.
Well, I'm glad somehow the tether is there. Yeah. I don't know what made me think of it, but maybe it was Titan's director doing two similar movies back to back, where you know, obviously Raw was this exploration where this, you know, human girl, but also she's very lupine, like,
she's very feral.
Very wolf-like, you know what I mean? So like humans tipping over like into this other, I don't know, this kind of otherness. And then obviously her second film, you know, like exploring, you know, this kind of othered, I don't know. I'm gonna write this out. I've got like some notes somewhere where I'm gonna just like make a through line, or maybe like a history thread or something.
Please do.
Well, okay, you mentioned writing. Let's talk about you as a writer. Have you always wanted to be a writer? Has that always been something that you have been interested in doing?
I guess not in the traditional sense. Like, obviously you kind of grow and change as you get older, but I know when I was really young, I really loved like creative writing, like fiction, and darn the public school system. But, you know, obviously you get, you know, kind of pigeonholed, like, write like this and write like that. And in college, I had a little bit more flexibility, but not much. Like in my master's program, I did like a lot of environmental studies and stuff like that, and gender and women and sexuality in my master's program. So there was tons of overlap, and I got to really kind of dig in even more to a topic that is actually like quite horrific on both ends. So tons of environmental horror history, and then tons of like gender, women, sexuality, like horror history, legislation, so on and so forth. So
both of which we're seeing a lot more of horror with. Like in the last year alone, we've seen on festivals or releases a whole lot of environmental horror going on. And of course, like the big kind of, it's almost become a trope over the last, I don't know, 7-8 years has been,
Mm-hmm.
you know, women not being listened to, or like the idea of like I'm using this in quotations, listeners, hysterical woman or something like that. Like that has become like a huge trend in horror, I think, recently.
Absolutely. It never went away.
No, it didn't. But it seems like
Yeah.
it seems like it's really increased a lot since Trump was elected.
Uh-oh, dun dun dun. But like we always talk about, like horror is political. Like horror is a, canary in the coal mine of what's going on like societally, like all the time. Like you can pick up your horror movies and whatever's going on in the world is like right there.
You can see all those kind of concerns and anxieties just playing out in front of you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you have such a cool background in all different subjects. How did you kind of find yourself writing more about horror movies specifically?
Burnout. Burnout from school.
Yay!
So burnout from school.
Getting your master's degree. It's a nightmare.
Yeah, it was an exhausting journey. But like that burnout like gave me the opportunity to be like, woo, I can finally write what I want to write. I can finally just kind of have the freedom to explore all the stuff I always wanted to write about, but didn't know how to go about it. So I just kind of found like a little corner on the internet and just started kind of writing. And then, some gaming, like a gaming magazine picked me up, and, it was an opportunity to kind of get my feet wet, as it were, and kind of learn about this whole writing for the internet kind of thing. So like I think I had maybe missed what maybe some people who had been on the internet a little longer, if they were writing and blogging and stuff, if they had, that greater introduction. So I kind of just had to wing it, and just by happenstance, people on the internet started finding it, reading it. I don't know how the internet algorithms work, how that even happens. I have no clue. I have no idea. But yeah, I think one of the biggest people that ever gave one of my pieces like a humongous boost was Ashley Blackwell.
Oh yeah.
So
she's
like
wonderful.
Professor Blackwell was like one of the first, and it was like my Candyman piece before Candyman even came out, and like ever since then, it's kind of been like full steam ahead.
Hell yeah.
So
love to see that.
You said Burnout, obviously, got you writing. But was there like a movie was there a movie that one day you saw and like, I have to write about this, that kind of like clicked in your head about connecting the two?
My very first piece, Terry might remember, I did an expansion of for Gaily Dreadful, but it was how I saw this through line with Invasion of the Body Snatchers and Get Out and The Skeleton Key, and how like these narratives, so these narratives that really explored how the creature or the other or whatever, as far as like the body snatching narrative, and how Black bodies were undesirable, or like the alien would never like assimilate into like anyone non-white. Like the alien somehow knew, or it was like at least this kind of undercurrent in these movies, and how one series of genre film, like, so like Invasion of the Body Snatchers was exploring how the alien didn't really want anything to do with non-white bodies. The Thing, similarly, but how that also that type of genre making can be subverted with like with The Skeleton Key, where it was a white body this time that was going to be like the vehicle for these Black people that had survived slavery and Jim Crow, and were like probably hundreds of years, or at least about 100, 200 years old by this point, and had been like body swapping for however long these bodies could be used. And obviously the most recent being like Get Out, with a narrative that kind of wrapped back around to the beginning with this body snatching narrative, and like how it shows up in movies, what to kind of look out for, how like I mentioned, how the genre can be subverted, and like kind of how insidious it is, how horrific, how it's got all these undertones of horror to it, and it's just like also even kind of like, I don't know, like horror humor even, that I could see maybe happening in a scary movie where the demon comes or the alien comes and they're just like, who to possess or who to take over. And they're like, ooh, not you. Like, you're already in danger here. Or like, oh no, bad choice. Keep moving.
Right.
So I don't know. It's also it's sobering, but it's also like just something. It's just something that, because human hands wrote this movie that maybe intentionally or unintentionally had this like commentary in there, So it's a thing. That was my first piece where I guess I can say thank you to university for that, for helping culture, me being able to like have my theory tinfoil hat board on with strings where all of this stuff is interconnected. Yeah. So
thanks, Zach. Yeah. Where did you get your master's?
So I went to Appalachian State. It's up in the mountains of North Carolina.
Oh, what was that like?
Beautiful, great, cool. Nice, quiet.
Hell yeah. That sounds serene.
Yeah, it actually really was. Like I had always wanted to go. When I first had been applying for schools in my undergrad, the pool is so small. Like they obviously have to have so many students that can like matriculate up there at a time, right. Mm-hmm. So I said, well, maybe one day. And then like master's time came up and I said, well, let me apply, I guess. Let me try. And lo and behold.
Hell yeah.
That's awesome.
I got in. So.
Well, Dani, you've chatted about your horror history and your horror work. What movie did you bring with you today for us to talk about that scarred you for life?
I brought a classique, Who Framed Roger Rabbit? From 1988.
All right, y'all. So for those of you unfamiliar, here is a brief synopsis of Who Framed Roger Rabbit. A tune-hating detective is a cartoon rabbit's only hope to prove his innocence when he is accused of murder. All right, Dani.
Yeah.
So, tell us your Scarred for Life story. Why is this the movie that you chose to talk about on this here podcast?
Okay, so, young me, putting in the VHS tape, said, oh, okay, cartoons. I love cartoons. This is gonna be a blast. And it was like, wait a minute, Disney characters, Warner Brothers characters, Fleischer Brothers, Betty Boop. Okay, let's go. And, watching it for the story, the cartoons, the humans, I guess. And then Judge Doom appeared.
Judge Doom.
A wild Judge Doom appeared. Pokemon, right?
Yep, I'm with you.
And completely made it... Okay, yeah, completely made it a horror film. Completely. Just completely, as soon as they showed up, killing shoes, boiling them to death.
That moment, even watching it as an adult, is like horrifying.
Yeah. And then turning around with this red, rosiny glove. Right?
It
looks like it's dripping blood, like it's so red.
It only escalated from there. So.
Wait, my thought here is, what does touching a tune feel like? And
that is a very...
What happens when it melts?
Oh.
Like, okay, look, I know what happens when it melts. Why did my voice go that way? I don't quite understand, but like, what is on your hand? Like, it's not blood, it's not flesh, like, what... I have so many logistical questions about what a tune is. How does it work?
I can only think of it, like, in terms of when the cartoon was made. So, I guess, like, if it was, say, like, the black and whites, I guess just traditional, maybe, like, inkwell ink, and then the other ones...
Okay, that makes sense.
Once the other ones, like, have more color, maybe, like, different kinds of chemical... components, but yeah, that is really horrific to think about.
I mean, really, it is. I think it is literally the ink, the leftover ink that is on his hand, because the shoe was red. So, like, I think it is literally like it literally dissolved, and what the ink that was left is what is on his hand, which is horrifying to think about.
But then, okay, I'm sorry. I have so many questions about this fucking movie. And then you have, obviously, like, the only way you can kill a toon is you put them in the dip, right? That was, like, the thing? Is that how you
or make them laugh to death,
okay,
apparently.
I was gonna say, because I thought they said just the dip, and then all the weasels laughed to death, and I'm like, what is the truth? Like, what is the truth? What is the truth here? And especially with them dying, their little bodies, like just little ghosts. And again, I know it's a movie about I know it's a dumb I know, I get it. But I just have so many logistical world building questions about how all of this works. Is there only a toon heaven? Is there also a human heaven?
Wow. But like real talk though, like what are the rules? You know? I don't know. Are there anything akin to like the Asimov's laws of robotics or something? Humans, like cartoons shall not blank. Cartoons shall not hurt humans. Cartoons shall not drop pianos on humans. Like
on humans' heads. So I thought I had never seen this movie when you picked it. Like I knew of it, but I was like, I'd never seen it. I had logged it on Letterboxd, and then when I started watching it, I was like, oh, I remember this opening sequence with the cartoon, like you have like the standard kind of Looney Tunes opening, and then I remembered like the hyena woman that Bob Hoskins runs into towards the end, and I was like,
Lena, I think her name is.
I was like,
oh man.
I still could not tell you if I actually saw this movie or I just saw clips of it. I still have no fucking idea how I saw this like what happened, but I think the thing that prevented me from watching this when I was younger, when I could have been more aware of it, was I think the idea of the cartoon and the human world coming together freaked me out. Like Space Jam freaked me out like that too. I think I was like very unnerved by the two worlds colliding because they're so different. And I think this movie once again tapped into that part of my brain where I'm like, yes, I could suspend all logic, or my brain could work 20 times harder to try to understand the rules of having these two dimensions combined.
I could see how it would be unnerving or horrific for somebody that, you know, just doesn't like cartoons or thinks they're a little odd or whatever. Like this movie could kind of flip that uncanny valley switch.
It's so weird because I've always loved cartoons. I loved cartoons as a kid. So it was so weird that but I guess maybe seeing them with people made them even scarier to me. Like I feel like when they're in the cartoon world, it all makes more sense. But then like you have Roger Rabbit next to a human and you're like, there's something very nightmarish about all of this. Like, I don't want it at all. It's so weird because I loved cartoons and I still love like animated series and stuff, but it's wild.
So I'm curious though, Dani. So you had said earlier that like, you know, you didn't get scared a lot at movies. So what was it about this movie, do you think, that like just like tweaked that switch in your head?
I know it was probably, you might have heard this phrase before, but like big-lipped alligator moment when Judge Doom is finally revealed for whatever they are. And like the voice and the noise and
when I killed your brother I like just
it was
I think
it was just too much. I think that was like before, because you know, scary human, I was like, okay, I'm kind of okay with those, but like, and not knowing like what they were or if they were going to transform into something else. And I was just like, please let this eldritch horror stop, please.
Wait, Roger Rabbit cosmic horror. It really is though.
I don't think it's that. Yeah, I think when I remember nothing of Judge Doom. Even when I started remembering parts of this movie, when he stands up, when he's flat, that is repulsive.
The effect, the uncurling of the body, and like
that whole scene of him getting run over by the steamroller, getting flattened, the noises he's making, like just like the most insane like toon and human noises combined in like this horrific thing, and then yes, he stands up, and it is unnatural. There is no way anyone should ever look like that, and he is just bouncing around his like paper thin body. It's horrifying.
Is anyone else ever terrified of getting run over by a steamroller as a child? Did anyone else have that fear in their heads at all? Only me?
I did after this movie.
Oh well. And Austin Powers, there's a scene where they run someone over with a steamroller, and I was.
Get
Lasting for forever.
But that, I was just like convinced I was going to get run over by a steamroller. So in watching this movie, I was like, "Aw, a throwback to the weird, irrational fears that I had as a kid." And you know what? Maybe this movie was the start of it, and I just couldn't remember it, and now it's all coming together.
Yeah, and this movie also
Who knows?
made me have it was like the first movie that made me think, oh my gosh, someone can hate their own kind, can be like, right? Be one,
yeah.
but like hate all the others. I'm like, wait a minute, but you're a toon, right? But you want to destroy and like assimilate. Like, I didn't really necessarily have the verbiage for this then, but I was like, but wait a minute.
That's so funny because when I was watching this today, and I was like, I think 10 minutes in, and I said to my fiance, this is like about class and race, right? He's like, yeah, actually, you're right, because he hadn't watched it in a while. He's like, wait, yeah, there's a lot of weird racial dynamics going on in this movie, but it's toons, and it's like, fascinating.
Yeah, it's got all those layers in there, like, especially when Judge Doom is giving that big speech, it just, like, hit me, like, in the gut, like, how many communities have been, like, literally steamrolled, bulldozed through. Like, just thinking about San Francisco alone, like, it used to have, like, a lot more, Black people that live there, a lot more, like, I guess they're, like, some rich gay people that can afford, like, certain areas, but, like, it used to be just, like, way more diverse than it is now before, like, tech took it over, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and it was weird because I was watching this movie too, and I probably haven't seen this, and I want to talk about my first time watching this movie in a minute, but I want to continue with this thought process because when I watched this, it had probably been the first time in a very, very, very long time, and I'm sitting here going, okay, so we're talking about the freeway and that we want to build the freeway. And I'm like, that is a loaded thing in LA because, back in 1956, they started routing freeways directly through and purposely a lot of times through Black and brown communities in order to destroy them and like compartmentalize and segregate and create these different areas. And I'm watching Toontown as it's been like isolated off from the rest of LA, and he wants to literally bulldoze it and literally wipe it out of existence with dip, like literally erase it that it ever existed in the first place.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm putting this together, and this is like, wow, I never realized that this is kind of what the movie is about.
Yeah, that horror through line. So like rewatching it, actually I just rewatched it today, just to be fresh, right, for our conversation. But I remember all of that stuff from childhood. So that's the sign of a really good movie, that I remember all of that like undertone, but like now being older and having even greater context because this is still happening. This is like gentrification is still happening. Redline, like the effects and the history of redlining is still happening.
Yeah.
Like all this overarching theme. And especially when he gives this speech, I could just hear some CEO, some capitalistic, individual, some billionaire, whatever, like saying the same exact words. I'm like, I know this was supposed to be set in the 1940s, but literally it's just like the script, you know what I mean? Like the billionaire script.
Well, and there was a part at the very beginning that made me think about this because it's when Eddie is at the, what the fuck is his name? Maroon. Yeah. Monsoon he's in his office and Dumbo knocks on the window and he goes, we pay them peanuts, and he throws peanuts out the window. And I'm like, oh, there's some like weird labor exploitation here though about not paying the toons enough and having them come on and do things for free because they can't die. They can't feel pain as much, and you don't have to pay them a lot. And I immediately was like, oh wow, this is a much smarter movie than I think I ever gave it credit for in like just the first opening couple of minutes.
Yeah, I picked up on that too, like how like now, especially like how exploitative the whole system like was. Depending on, let's say, like we're probably going to get into the Jessica Rabbit stuff soon, but like depending on how you're drawn, what your valuable economy is, like obviously let's say like Betty Boop has been kind of put on the shelf because she's the older Jessica Rabbit.
She's the old, she's black and
She's
white.
just selling cigarettes, walking around the bar with a tray of cigarettes.
Boop, boop, be-doo,
right, when she's literally a queen, an icon, like a legend.
Icon.
Right, a legend in animation. And like, just, forgotten.
And they bring on the new one that is, of course, obviously drawn by a man that's like thin waist, huge,
thin
breast.
waist.
Like,
it's
just
literally like a triangle meeting another triangle.
Uh-huh. It is like the Barbie doll's a Barbie doll like form, right? And so it's like you have that replacing the old because they're not sexy enough. They're not in color. They're not this. They're not that. So out with the old and with the new. It's there's a lot about that with in terms of like labor exploitation and your worth of your body, how much your body is worth in as a commodity in this.
Well, think about Roger Rabbit and like how much shit he's putting himself through to make people laugh, slapstick comedy and the physical expense, and they don't go into it as much because toons have weird physicality is weird for toons, but at the same time, it's like. Still rings true when you hear of actors now doing things and like Brendan Fraser ruining his body for entertainment, and a lot of people losing their lives for that in front of the camera. So it's like, it's funny.
Them yelling at him because he doesn't have birds. Yeah, or was it birds around his ear? They wanted stars, and he just kept getting all these different things around his head, as if because he couldn't get what they wanted. And I'm like, at the end of the day, does it really matter? But he's going through so much pain to please them.
Yeah, and thinking about like this world. I can only assume that maybe, I don't know how it works. Okay, I'm with Mary Beth on this one. I don't know how it works. That it seems like they're not hand-drawn. I don't know. That maybe once they're hand-drawn, they come to life, and like that's the long and short of it. They dust their hands off, and they're alive now. But I'm just like, I don't know. It just seems, I don't know. The way this...
Is it a SpongeBob magic pencil situation here? Like a Doodle Bob scenario? Like, are we having a pencil that you draw and it pops out? Like, where's the summoning circle?
Yeah. Like, that's... it. I don't know. It just gives you just so much layers of horror once you really start thinking. Really thinking.
Oh, I want an edgy crime drama where it's in that tunnel between Toontown and LA, and it's the LA cops and the Toontown cops coming together to solve a murder in both Toontown and LA. I think that would be an incredible sequel.
Yeah.
It's not really cops here. It's more just like an idiot rabbit. But
I think some other movies tried to either capitalize or like at the same time try to do that blurring between the human toon world. Like, what was that one Ralph Bakshi movie? Was it a Ralph Bakshi movie? It had like Brad Pitt and
Monkey Shine?
Well,
Monkey Bones?
Monkey Bone was one, and then there's another one I'm thinking of. Cool World. That was in 92.
Oh, Cool World.
And I think he was
Brad Pitt, right?
Steve,
was that Brad Pitt?
Yes. Steve was literally just talking about this to me today. He's like, oh yeah, it's like that movie where Brad Pitt falls in love with the cartoon lady. I was like, what? 1992. Yeah, Cool World.
So like, it seemed like others tried, but it, they didn't seem to, because obviously Monkey Bone and Cool World were like adult, like marketed movies. Where this one kind of straddled a line a little bit. Like they tried to get that PG... And I think this is still when the rating system was different. So like PG, quote unquote, audience.
This being PG?
Yeah.
I was like, it's weird watching it now and being like, did they stretch that rating really far. But I do think that this was PG-13? Was that in existence at this point? I can't remember.
I don't know. I can't remember when that switch happened. If it was in the late 80s or the 90s. I can't remember.
I think it would have been changed by 88. I think.
Okay, so there were complaints about gore in films such as Indiana Jones and The Temple of Doom and Gremlins. And so the PG-13 rating was introduced in 1984.
Oh, okay.
So it's surprising that this movie did not get a PG-13 rating. To be perfectly honest, because like the language in this film, the double entendres are quite fierce, particularly with the cigar chomping baby.
Yeah, that part.
Well, but I also was like, is this a kid's movie or an adult movie? You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
obviously you have, like, the Looney Tunes and Disney characters and stuff, but it just feels so inherently adult in what it is and the topics it's hitting.
Yeah.
Like, I guess it's hard for me to... I've never seen it as a kid's movie. Like, even when I was a kid, I didn't think of it as a kid's movie, even with the animated stuff. So I don't know, what did you guys... what have you thought of this movie in terms of, like, for adults, aimed more at adults and more at kids?
I just thought back to my animated, like, history, like the fact that animated, cartoons and shorts and stuff initially were for adults or had adult humor, were before, like, your main feature or whatever at the cinema, and, like, a lot of that, either it had, sexual innuendos in it, it had directly adult humor, it had stuff that was more for adults. So I'm thinking about this movie obviously probably tapping into that obviously, I guess, in 88, so I guess those that were, I guess maybe our parents' generation, probably, like, this would have been immediately, like, recognizable to them, and I guess our grandparents, so yeah.
True.
I mean, I saw this. If it came out in 88, I probably saw this when I was 8, because I was born in 81, and so I didn't see it in the movie theater. No, I did see this in the movie theater. I just had a memory. I do remember seeing this in the movie theater now.
Wow.
So I was probably 7. I was probably 7 when I saw this.
Wow.
Like, I just all of a sudden had this memory of sitting in the theater and seeing that opening cartoon with Baby Herman. This movie gave me some weird connotations that, like, have lingered in my head since I was a kid. What I love about this movie now as an adult is that this is a noir through and through. Like, this follows all of the steps of noir, and I want to dig into that a little bit more deeply, maybe. But when Valiant is going to get photographs of Jessica Rabbit and whoever she has been having hanky-panky with, right? They're trying to get illicit photographs of her and some man, right? And so they do, and they're photographing it, and all we hear is, patty cake, patty cake. And I'm a kid. I've played patty cake. And I would ask my parents, I have this memory of asking my parents, like, what is going on? Why is this a problem? And them being like, don't worry about it. That's for adults. And I was like, wait, is patty cake inappropriate? Because, like, I would, you'd patty cake, baker's man. Like, I would do that on the schoolyards. Yeah. And I was like, is this? Because, like, my parents didn't want to talk about it. And I knew in my head, anytime my parents didn't want to talk about something, it was something adult and inappropriate. And adult and inappropriate meant something that I had to close my eyes for. Because my parents would let me watch a lot of R-rated movies, especially when I was around this age. They got a little bit more strict afterwards. But anytime there was, like, nudity, I had to close my eyes.
Yeah, no nudity. That's right. For parents, I forgot.
So anytime there was, like, any kind of nudity, it didn't matter if it was violence or whatever, I could watch it. But I was very self-censoring. Because I wanted to watch these movies. So I would sit there, even when my parents weren't there, and close my eyes and not watch the movie. And so there was a connotation in my head that what they were doing was inappropriate and that I shouldn't be watching it. And so I've had, like, a weird thing with patty cake ever since this movie came out, thinking that it's something like patty cake is sex, patty cake is sex, patty cake is sex, like, in my head, since I saw this probably as a 7 or 8 year old.
Yeah, like, it kind of, I guess, will start to delve into, like, what is intimate for cartoons versus, I guess, humans, I suppose. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Mary Beth.
So,
uh-oh.
I texted Terry today while I was watching this.
Oh, boy.
A simple text. What do you think Roger Rabbit's dick is like? Because this movie is so obsessed with the sexual activities of Roger Rabbit and Jessica Rabbit, and it's a nightmare. It is a nightmare, because all I could think about was Roger Rabbit having sex. And that's all I can't think about.
Like, I guess the silver lining is for people who identify as Arrow or Ace, like, this movie really kind of hit them, and, like, how two people can have a relationship, but it being based on something being based or founded in something completely different. You know what I mean? like them like respecting each other as individuals, them seeing like the beauty in each other, like, you know, she thought he was like really courageous and brave, but also like hilarious. Like, I remember even at the end of the movie, she said, "Oh, honey, that was brilliant. Like, you were funnier than Goofy." Like, you know what I mean? So like, and I love like now that a lot of people claim like Jessica Rabbit as like this like first like ace like icon, and like all the like.
I actually didn't know that. I never knew that. I didn't. You claimed her as an ace icon.
So it's out there. It's out there. I don't know what you'd even Google. Maybe just Jessica Rabbit, like asexual or arrow or whatever. But like some people have, and maybe even her color scheme a little bit. I don't know. But like just the fact that their relationship was, you know what I mean? Like so atypical that obviously immediately people think like, oh, it's, you know, like, wait a minute, you know, sexual, blah, 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 that like, that the relationship could be founded on something like purer than that. Well, I don't know, not that sexual relationships aren't pure, but like a different kind of way to build a relationship and a marriage and everything else. That I love that even, you know, he was brokenhearted at first, but he was like, no, I know Jessica loves me. Like what we have is real. And like they fought for each other as we saw in the movie, that like actively Jessica Rabbit was like, you know, trying to make sure he was okay and safe. And, you know, like it was actually really different than a lot of movies, you know, that we get. And, you know, obviously I guess there's that kind of anthropomorphic component to it, that he's obviously a rabbit. Well, okay. She's a human cartoon woman.
That's the other thing. And that is what Terry and I were also talking about, where it's like, what's the species? Okay. Your reading is so much more, it's so much better than my horrifically horny look at it. I am so sorry. Like her as, like their relationship as like, more like an arrow ace kind of like representation is way better than me being like, I don't understand how a cartoon woman and a cartoon rabbit have a sexual relationship. But
yeah,
also the difference between like humans in our sense, humans in the cartoon sense, and then animals in the toon sense. And like, is there a hierarchy here of species? Is it not weird when you're a cartoon? Is there love between toons and humans? Once again, I just want to know all of the details of how this world works. I need all of... I like lore a lot, and I need to know all of the details.
Yeah, like it really kind of made me have a little bit of flashbacks how there were like these sometimes animal relationships that we watched as kids, like two different animals being in a relationship, sometimes a human and a animal-ish person. You know what I mean? Like, Goofy movie, like,
Goofy has a dog. What does that mean? Like, why? How does Goofy have a pet dog?
Well, and I've talked about this on the podcast before, but like, I mean, I do think that there was some sexualization of anamorphic cartoon animals. I remember being, as a kid, before I really understood my sexuality, thinking that Robin Hood, the Disney Robin Hood character, was handsome. We talked about we talked on the podcast before Secret of Nim, and I thought Justin the Rat was incredibly handsome. Like there is a time in like the 80s and the late 70s, to that matter, where like there was kind of a rise in these anamorphic creatures that are like hot, and it continued on into like Zootopia. Is that what it's called? I can't remember his name, but the character that Jason Bateman played.
Nick the Fox.
Yeah.
Nick, and then Judy Rabbit with her like curves and shit.
Yeah.
Like,
and so in my mind, I'm watching that, I'm watching this, and I'm putting the two together, and I also was curious how their relationship, I mean, you know, it could, I say this, but I am so happy that you're able to bring up the Arrow Ace aspect of it, because like, I never really even thought about that before. And it actually makes more sense, because he's so upset when he sees his wife playing patty cake, which again, in my childhood mind, is associated with sex, but is really just a thing, right?
Yeah.
It's like a pretty harmless childhood game.
Yeah, like, I guess like a bonding thing, you know what I mean? Like, I could only imagine so many different things that we would think are childish, but for them are like so pure and like innocent, that like to have somebody else maybe Desecrate,
Yeah.
something like that sweet, And I get it. I was like, Arcade Maroon, really? Acme dude? Yuck.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm sorry, Jessica. I'm sorry you were put in that position.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
So, okay, the other thing that like has been ingrained in my head since I was a kid was I think, I want to go back to this because his transformation into a toon.
Oh God, we're back to it. We're back.
Yes, because this is the thing that is more so than patty cake has been stuck in my head ever since I saw this as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I must have seen this when I was 7 or 8, which is around the same time I started watching R-rated horror movies.
Mm-hmm.
And this movie, I would refuse to watch this part.
Ooh.
When he gets run over, first of all, the horrific sounds that he's making as he's getting run over. And then when he is standing up and it's all of a sudden this uncanny valley of like, what is going on? He's a human, but humans do not move like that. Humans cannot be flat like that. And then he blows himself up with air, and all of a sudden he doesn't look human. It's like the model of them when he's blowing him up is not a human person.
Yeah.
And so there's the uncanny valley of that. And then he turns around and his eyes pop out, and he turns around and all you see is this human body with like these toon eyes that are going spinning and going wild and popping out of his head. For some reason, that combination of the cartoon and the human freaked me the fuck out to the point that I was like, I can't handle this. I cannot handle this. And I would hide behind my couch when this part happened.
Yeah. Like, this movie was a trip down memory lane where I recalled vividly where a lot of stuff we used to watch as kids, so like your Disney movies or your Don Bluth movies, would just have a horrific turn. Just sometimes out of nowhere. Sometimes just a single scene with, let's say, like Pinocchio with the changing into the donkeys, or
oh god,
like there, or just like I don't know, Ichabod, Crane with the Headless Horseman. Like there were so many animated movies that would just be like la 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 cartoon, and then dun dun dun.
Now we're going to traumatize you.
That would just take this turn. That would just be like, we're in the horror lane now, and we're not stopping.
Mm-hmm.
We're not stopping until the movie is over. So, yeah, it's on the list where it just is one of those movies that takes a turn, and you're not ready for it. And I think that's what it is, too. Like, you don't have any warning. It just happens.
Yeah, and I totally, like, even watching it now, aside from the moment when they kick over the dip and it pours toward him and he, like, backs up earlier in the film, there's really no indication that he is not just a horrific human.
Yeah.
Right? There's, like, none of that. And I think it's that moment. It's still, every single time it happens, it's, like, this surprising, like, oh, this is, well, first of all, it's a great twist. But second of all, it's just, like, this is absolutely horrifying.
Yeah.
Well, it's so fucked too, because Dani, you talked about this, about how he hates toons so much that he's willing to basically commit genocide on the entire toon population left in the area. Like, he's gonna just melt them all with all of that juice. Like, you're gonna commit genocide.
Yeah.
Like,
with like a big vat of like super duper nail polish remover, like
yeah, exactly. That's like cooked up by a bunch of weird laughing weasels.
Yeah, and like before that little, it was very short, but he was like, you remember what happened to like the hyenas before you? They laughed themselves to death too. And I was just like, oh no, I love hyenas. I hate that that they went out that way.
And then we have Lena the hyena.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, man.
But something I will say, this movie is gorgeous. Like, even today, it stands up so well in how people in cartoons are interacting with one another in such an interesting kind of, organic is not the right word, but it feels like the right word, because it's like, it doesn't feel fake. It's weird. They get so seamless in how they're having the character, like all of these characters interact with one another regardless of medium, and even like having like Bob Hoskins holding a cartoon gun, like an animated gun and all this stuff. Like they really are playing with how the mediums interact, not just like we're standing next to each other, but like running into things, holding things, kissing things. Like, Bob Hoskins is in Toontown entirely at one point, and I think I was really impressed with how gorgeous this movie holds up from 1988.
Yeah, and even with the few, kind of locations outside of Toontown, so like just even like the area, like the cafe, the trolley line, just kind of seeing this little corner of like San Francisco and the Bay Area at that time. I'm always impressed whenever movies do like a little period or like a period piece to get all of those like nuances like just right, and the setting and the cars and the clothes, and it's always impressive. Very, very impressive.
Well, and I what I was thinking about this, watching this as an adult, is like I'm very vocal about how I dislike modern blockbusters' use of CG, because it doesn't feel like people are acting against anything. Mm-hmm. It doesn't feel like what they're CGing into the scene is actually really there. It has no presence. Whereas this movie understands dynamics in terms of everything feels very three-dimensional. The way everything is shot feels three-dimensional. The way the characters are interacting with each other feels natural. I mean, aside from the fact that it's obviously a cartoon, they feel like they are real things that are there, and people in the real world, real props are interacting with them. I love the scene where Roger Rabbit takes the plates and he's like stuck in a loop and he's banging them on his head. Mm-hmm. It looks so real. Or the moment when Valentine is trying to hide Roger Rabbit in the sink of water. Mm-hmm. The whole scene, it has presence in a way that a lot of modern blockbusters that are using similar techniques in here, where they're have like CG to put in the background, or they're CGing in creatures or monsters that people are interacting with. It has the same kind of interactions, but it feels more real here. Yeah. And I also think it's really ironic that this was directed by Robert Zemeckis, who would go on to make the horrifying Polar Express and really just go down the rabbit hole of like really bad computer graphics, whereas like he mastered it. And I love some of his movies, but really his career trajectory with incorporating animation, whether it's computer or hand-drawn in movies, has kind of gone downhill since this movie.
Yeah, I can't remember if it was Robert Zemeckis or I think another person attached to this movie who said, I'll sign on, I'll put my capital behind it. This will be a launch pad for me. And I think it was the person who went on to make, what was it? The Something in the Tailor. It was another animated movie that like had been in production like hell for years and years. And even it was like not completely finished, and like his career like kind of fizzled out.
Oh.
But yeah, those who I guess were on the up and up got like the good side of this, because this movie was incredibly expensive to make, like very expensive.
Oh, really?
Right.
Like the budget kind of kept going up more and more and more and more, because like you said, all of this stuff cost to like make sure that everything was perfect, every single scene, making sure that like the rotoscoping like technology, and even kind of going back to basics with some really clever things that they used to do in old Hollywood movies and cartoons, and like having to even sometimes create brand new, technologies. So like this movie got like very expensive, but thank goodness it made its money back and then some. So yay.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I love this movie so much, and rewatching it just like brought back all of those memories. Yeah. But I do want to talk about the noir aspect, in particular, the way that I think this movie kind of subverts the noir tropes in some ways, because I love Jessica Rabbit, because she's like, she's a femme fatale, let's be honest, right? She's playing that character in noir of a femme fatale, and she says, I'm not bad, I'm just drawn this way. And it's it's an iconic line, right? But she isn't bad, and she is playing into that character, but everything she does is for a good reason. And she ends up not being the person that's behind it all, or the person that's going to backstab the detective. She is, in fact, saving Valiant at one point and shooting the guy behind him. Like this is someone who is saying that I am this trope, but no, I'm actually not this trope. Mm-hmm. And I love that about her.
Yeah.
The booby trap joke is truly an incredible.
That's hilarious. That was hilarious.
I was like, I accept the fact that he did that only because she played into it and had and like obviously they made her have the booby trap, but it still made me giggle. Like it still worked. But I did like that she has, like, the tiny waist, the beautiful hair, the huge boot. Like, she's, like, very over-accentuated figure of what a femme fatale is. And she really is just, like, a woman who loves her dude. And he makes her laugh, and that's all she cares. Like, he can make her genuinely happy, and that is why she loves him. And people... Yeah. And I think this happens in a lot of comedies where, like, they make fun of, like, the hot girl and the guy. And, like, what do you see in him? But it's, like, here I feel like they play it to a really sweet point of, like, y'all think you know what I want because I am so, like, I look one way and you expect me to be superficial, but really all I want is someone who likes me for me, and, like, we mutually respect each other. And I love that.
Yeah, I know, more of that. And it's like, you know, tall, small relationship, you know, it kind of hits all of those different, you know, things, and, like, yeah, I mean...
she picks him up and carries him around.
I know. Like, there's so many, like, different aspects of it that I'm just like, more. And, you know, thinking about it in our modern context, maybe it was, like, our first gateway that we saw that, like, holy crap, like, this is, like, you know, quote-unquote queer, like, relationships, right? Like, seeing these things and, like, seeing, like, oh, wow, like, how healthy this is, and, like, how much they love each other, and, like, what is attraction really, like, that it's on a spectrum, and, like, you're attracted to what you're attracted to, and, like, it was just, I don't know, it just warm butterfly feels.
Plus Kathleen Turner's voice.
Yes!
Oh, man. Okay, did you guys know this was based on a book?
Yes, I did. I only knew this because thanks to the lovely people from Horror Queers who gave me that little slip of information. I'm like, really? This was a book?
I only knew it after they said it in the credits. I was like...
Yeah.
It's interesting, though, because the book is so much different than the movie, because Roger Rabbit dies in the book. He gets murdered in the very beginning.
Oh, no.
No way. Isn't it? It's Who's Erased, Roger Rabbit, you said?
Who's Censored.
Who's Censored. Oh.
And so he got censored, and the only thing that they find at his crime scene was his speech balloon.
Oh, wow. Ooh, that is...
It's kind of cool, but fucked up, but cool.
Yeah. Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so some of the characters are the same, because he had the ex-widow Jessica Rabbit, his former co-star Baby Herman. So, like, there are characters that are reutilized here. But and I think that, like, it gets really wild in terms of, like, there's a doppelganger for Roger, and there's, like, all this other stuff going on. I've not read it. I read the Wikipedia page that has, like, a very, you know, snippet, and I was like, this thing just sounds incredibly wild. But yeah, Roger Rabbit gets censored, aka murdered, in the book.
Wow. And thinking about the movie we got instead, how much they capped, how much they changed. Ooh. That obviously the book is maybe just as dark, if not a little darker, obviously.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it definitely took a darker tone than what we got in the movie.
Wow. Woo.
So in the book, the cartoons were primarily comic strip characters as opposed to animated cartoon stars. And a lot of strip characters made cameo appearances: Dick Tracy, Snoopy, Dagwood, and Blondie, Beetle Bailey, Hagar the Horrible. So it was more like comic strip characters than it was like animation.
Wow.
But yeah. Wild.
Well, that adds a layer.
Yeah, right?
Oh, you know what? Speaking of Judge Doom, I just remembered this. Okay, before I forget it. Thinking about movies that didn't scare me in my childhood, but made me be like, woo, what a cool, quote-unquote, villain. Okay, when Judge Doom is sinking into the floor, obviously it gave me, like, the Wicked Witch vibes, right?
Yep.
So they probably even used the similar or the same, you know, technique about going into, like, some trapdoor floor or whatever. And it's just like, hey, Wicked Witch, nice to see you again. Whom I loved as a kid, by the way. Like, I love Judy Garland, really? and I love the Wicked Witch, but I was just like, she's cool. Like, something about it, like, pinged. Even back then, I was like, she's cool. Like, what? I don't know, but obviously I know why now, right? So
Right. Also, talking about characters that, like, aren't as they first appear, Baby Herman.
Baby Herman.
What a gross little character, I have to say.
Yeah.
The way he just sort of like walks under a woman's, dress when he's storming off the set, or him smacking the butt of the woman that's pushing him around in like the cart.
The cart? You mean the baby stroller?
The baby stroller. That's
cart.
Yeah.
The cart.
But his quote, or his thing of, my problem is I got a 50-year-old lust and a 3-year-old dinky. I'm like, how did you get away saying this?
I was like, someone wrote
in
that.
a PG movie.
PG.
Yeah, for everyone, for the whole family.
The whole family. I'm seeing this as an 8-year-old, and I'm like, what's a dinky?
But I have to remember, too, when I had a flashback that, like, Touchstone and Amblin Entertainment were obviously, like, Spielberg, and then, like, I think a studio above that where they could do a little bit more, like, adult-ish movies, because I know like Sister Act came out of Touchstone, and like some other movies that could have, it could be a family movie, but it would have like adult stuff, but like things that will like fly under the radar for the kids, you know what I mean? That like the kids could be there and be quiet and giggle when necessary, but the adults would cackle, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Fair.
I mean, it's also like, this was because Disney owned Touchstone at that, Touchstone Pictures at that time. And then Warner Brothers was also the co-company. I think this is the only time that we have seen Walt Disney and Warner Brothers appearing together on screen. That's kind of wild.
Yeah.
Really? Oh, I guess so. Huh.
That they actually had to license the rights from all parties. So I think that's why when you see like at the very end of those credits, it's like studio, and like and whoever owned the character rights, like all stacked up together in those end credits. Like I can't even imagine, like you said, like as far as the cost of this movie adding up for them to like license Betty Boop, license whoever's in the back, that sometimes they may not have even had a line, but like Daffy Duck and
oh my god, Daffy and Donald's epic like piano duel.
Well, and when I was watching this now, I was watching it on Disney Plus, and I was just sitting here, I'm like, this is like a 2022 nightmare. Like, this could never happen in 2022, I feel like. Like, there would just be too many fights about rights, and obviously a lot of these characters are original characters. Like, the main characters are original characters, but still, like, there is no way I feel like this would be possible in the year of our Lord 2022, just with how litigious all of these companies are now.
Well, and the fact that you have Dumbo in a cartoon where a baby is talking about his dinky.
Yeah. Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Although I have to say that have you guys seen the new Chippendale Rescue Rangers movie?
I've heard about it.
Not.
It's, I mean, it's not as good as this movie, but like it definitely is doing some similar things. In particular, Sonic the Hedgehog, the ugly Sonic, is in this. Remember before they before the fan outcry and they redid his CG? Ugly Sonic is in this. And he's selling merch as Ugly Sonic.
I saw
that's kind of
in that movie.
That is kind of incredible. I do love that.
I saw that trending online, and I was like, "Why is Sonic or like Ugly Sonic like trending? What is going on?" And that somebody uploaded footage, and I was like, "Ugh, I did not need that. I did not need that."
It's really kind of funny because they keep like lingering on his very human teeth. Like there's a shot of like the camera goes in on his teeth and everyone's just like staring at it in like absolute horror.
Yeah, like Ugly Sonic, honestly, when I think about it, why we're just so repulsed is like if cartoons could age the way humans age. Like I feel like, Sonic, obviously early 80s, he'd probably be like what, like 30s, 40s now, maybe knocking on 50. So like, he would be like bedraggled and like less fluffy and cute. You know what I mean? So maybe that's what it's hitting for, us like nostalgia people. It's just like, you're like old,
Well, I also do think that there is like Uncanny Valley, there is a realm between having a cute anamorphic animal that is both has human qualities and is also an animal, and something that it looks like you took a human and an animal and like merged it together, and it's like animal until it opens its mouth and all of a sudden it has human teeth. Like I think there's like an uncomfortable level of Uncanny Valley that we see in there that is the same kind of trauma that I got from Judge Doom with his like human body and his horrible cartoon eyes. Like I think it's that juxtaposition that is just,
and obviously we have to give like a ton of praise, right, to Christopher Lloyd's performance.
Perfect.
That he is like a titan of horror that I think we like before, before he passes away, we need to like get him on like all the horror remembering stuff, because I mean, he is just like an icon, a legend as far as like films are concerned. And it's also like what he sells, like his physicality completely changes from Judge Doom, because if you think about it, he's very like almost robotic when he's human. Like he doesn't move very much, or like his turns are very abrupt or very sharp. And I just noticed this now. I never noticed this before, but whenever he's like even standing still or just moving around, his cape, his little short cape is billowing in the wind. I never noticed. It really is. And it's just like, nobody else has wind. It's like Beyonce. I'm like, nobody else has wind, but you have wind. You have a fan, but no one else. Like, and I was just like, huh. So maybe, I don't know if that was like a signal that like he's some kind of otherworldly. I don't know. But the point is, the physicality completely changed when he was also more cartoony abomination.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it was just like,
well, and I think he's a very good physical actor, because I mean, you think about him being sort of like this very tall, gangly, very thin, almost like surreally thin, like person, and then he would go on to be Uncle Fester in 1993, right?
Yeah.
So it's like,
oh, that's right.
And he's more schlubby, and he feels like he's like kind of hunched over. Like his physicality and his roles are just, I mean, I think he's an underrated actor.
Yeah, he's incredible. Incredible.
He really is. I love him.
He's really good in Over the Garden Wall. He was the voice actor in Over the Garden Wall.
Oh, that's awesome. I followed him too when I was a kid, like for his voice acting. Like I would know like immediately. Like that was another thing that like I could just pick up when I was a kid. Like I was a huge like voice acting person that like those voices, they just stand out. Like if you listen for them, they show up like over and over and over again. So it probably helped, like we said, like we grew up on cartoons and a lot of those voices would show up a lot. And before the advent of the internet, you just had to do the hard work and like research and be like, who was that? Or like watch cartoon specials or PBS or if like Cartoon Network, when they had Toonheads on TV, and they had like some other shows that like, shout out to Ted Turner, like thank goodness I guess for him, who like saved a lot of this stuff from like falling into kind of, I guess, I don't know, like what's the word I'm looking for, falling into obscurity.
Right.
So like there's a, obviously it's kind of exploded since then, but I guess that there's obviously a reason why like Cartoon Network, Warner Brothers, what is it, Turner Classic, and everything else that's on that HBO Max platform, that was like gradually all of Ted Turner's doing, like gradually acquiring all of this IP before it was even like a thing, before people even knew that was even possible, and lo and behold, we have what is it, like the WWE showing up with Scooby-Doo?
Oh my god, wait, really?
Yeah, like there's like a couple WWE superstar movies with Scooby-Doo. Like, the fact that I'm even saying those words, I know they don't sound like they...
It doesn't sound like a real fake, thing. Like
but it's real.
Yeah, like the ramblings of, I don't know, a mad woman, but I think about even like when we were kids, remember we had those crossovers with like, what was it, Scooby-Doo and such meet like Vincent Price, or like Scooby-Doo like meets the Harlem Globetrotters, or Scooby-Doo meets like Don Knotts or whatever. Like they had all of these different like crossovers back then. And yeah, so it's just like, so I guess that's not too out of the realm of the ordinary obscure.
Yeah.
So before we wrap up for today, watching this as an adult, does this movie still scare you? Does it bring you back to that childhood fear?
Judge Doom, yes, is still unsettling. Am I as terrified? Sort of. I mean, I think maybe the consolation is like, okay, thank God he can be destroyed. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's the consolation. Like, okay, you can be vanquished. Thank goodness. But if there was...
Politics is dip.
Yeah, but if there was nothing, I'd be like, no, I can't do it with this movie. but it's all of those kind of adult commentary things that for me make this movie really chilling. You know what I mean? Upon rewatch and all of the commentary and how it's very, very greatly interwoven throughout the whole narrative about like changing America. You know what I mean? So like, it's got so many different kind of layers to it, but yeah, traumatizing, but I guess not in the way that I once was. Scarred for life.
A different kind of traumatizing.
Scarred for life, yes, always. Like those scars will never heal, you know?
Yeah.
So the pain is just too real. Evanescence, you're welcome.
Wow.
But yeah, totally. Like this movie is on one of those that like when my nephew gets a little older, I'm like, you watch this. You enjoy this. Watch. He's 5. He's 5 now. So I'm just like, will you be as terrified of this as I was? I'll be a bad auntie. Maybe I'll be the good auntie that like keeps the horror train going.
Yeah.
I was going to say.
I think that is the good auntie.
That's me for my cousins.
That's the kind of uncle I would be.
Yeah.
Okay, yay. I'm glad I have you all support.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, Terry, you're first. How many cigar smoking babies out of 5 do you give Who Framed Roger Rabbit?
This movie, even though I haven't seen it many times since I was a kid, honestly, kind of going with what you were saying, Dani, I was, the moment Judge Doom walks on the scene, I found myself like physically tensing up even as an adult. Like that is how lingering the horror was of this character in my mind, and how much it traumatized me more so than a lot of horror movies that I saw as a kid. Because I physically was like, why am I so tense? I'm like, I had to like, you know, stop myself and massage my arms because I was literally sitting there just balled fist, like just tense. Oh, wow. Just the entire. It was the weirdest experience for me. But watching this as an adult, I think my appreciation for this movie has grown so much. Just the things that it is tackling in terms of like historical accuracy. We didn't even really touch on the fact that, yes, there's the talk of the freeway, but there's also the true great American streetcar scandal where a bunch of motor companies created a dummy company to buy out the red cars in order to get rid of the electricity and put forward automobile and diesel fueled engines to like make more money for themselves. Like this is all pulling from a lot of historical stuff that as a kid, way over my head, obviously. I just was like, this bunny's funny. He's hitting his head over and over again, and there's different things popping out. Like I think this movie is great. I think it looks fantastic. I think it holds up to today. I think it looks better than a lot of movies that are made today that use the same technology. So, I mean, this is I think this is probably a 4 and I'm cutting that baby in half. 4.5 cigar smoking babies for me. What about you, Mary Beth?
So I don't have the same nostalgia for this movie, obviously, as a lot of people do, but I really loved watching it. I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about it. I feel like I had that dumb hipster thing of like, I was going to be overrated, which is like gross. I'm gross. But I was thankfully not correct. And like you said, Terry, this movie is so much smarter than I could have anticipated in terms of how it tackles all different kinds of political issues and race and romance and relationships in a really fascinating way. And Bob Hoskins gives an incredible performance, and I love him, especially at the end when he dances and makes all of the weasels laugh until they die.
Okay, the weasel that holds on to his soul trying to keep it is one of my favorite parts.
Tries to pull it back in. Oh my god. I know. But I think I'm also going to give this 4.5 cigar smoking babies out of 5. Dani, you have the final word. How many cigar smoking babies do you give Who Framed Roger Rabbit?
I'm going to, you know what? I'm gonna give it all of its flowers that it's due. I'm gonna give it all the cigars, hand wrapped, hand stuffed. You know,
hand stuffed, love it.
Yeah, like this movie is honestly a miracle. Like this movie shouldn't exist. Like we're in the timeline that this movie exists. That I feel like in another timeline it would have been too expensive. It would have been too difficult. The licensing, drawing it, getting all of the actors involved, writing a script from that book that makes any kind of sense, any kind of coherent sense. So, like, it's honestly a miracle that we have this movie, and it's a testament to maybe others that want to try their hand at doing something like this. That, like, a great rubric to follow, like what works, what doesn't work, when to pull either the humor back or the animation or this character, how to utilize them and everything else. So yeah, this movie's a miracle. I'm gonna give it a 5 out of 5.
Hell yeah.
Cool.
Well, thank you so much, Dani, for joining us to talk about Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Where can our listeners find you, and what do you have coming up that you can share?
Oh, great. I'm so glad that you all had me on the show. It's really an honor. I am only on Twitter, so that's the only place you can tweet me. At the Dani Bethea, where the horror resides is like my main title. I don't think I'm ever going to change it because it's brilliant. You can find me. I have all my links to anything that I've ever written there. And coming up, Wink Wink with Dread Central, Mary Beth. She has something cooking over there for me, so stay tuned this Pride Month. Not sure when this episode's coming out, but be on the lookout for it anyway. I'm going to keep that thread that we talked about earlier as far as horror movies having this really interesting tether with like animals or the machine or humans being some kind of, I don't know, some kind of extreme something. I don't know. I've got to come up with a name for it. That's usually like half the battle. It's like, that's the fun part.
Yeah.
Getting all of my red string on my, on my board to put all of my tinfoily hat stuff together. So
the best.
But yeah, cool. Stay tuned.
Awesome.
So listeners, you've heard from us, but we want to hear from you. What was your experience with Who Framed Roger Rabbit? You can send us an email at scarredforlifepodcast@gmail.com or reach out to us directly on Twitter. I am at MB McAndrews.
And I'm at Gaily Dreadful.
And of course, don't forget to follow the podcast on Twitter at Scarred Podcast.
And please don't forget to review, rate, and subscribe.
Thank you to Eric Parr for our artwork. Thank you to Sean Keller for our music. Thank you everyone for listening. Please stay safe out there. Please take care of each other. Most importantly, stay creepy.
And until next time.